Aujourd'hui, nous avons à côté de moi le gouverneur de la Banque du Canada, Stephen S. Poloz, ensuite le ministre des Finances, Bill Morneau.
On our government's website. I understand that some of you watching today are worried about your families. We encourage all Canadians to take steps as necessary to protect themselves. As we've seen this week, the reality of this virus means that everybody needs to take the necessary precautions. We know that this virus has created impacts on our economy, and we're ready to address these impacts. Earlier this week, we announced over $1 billion to make sure
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue au Théâtre national de la presse. Aujourd'hui, nous avons à côté de moi le gouverneur de la Banque du Canada, Stephen S. Poloz, ensuite le ministre des Finances, Bill Morneau.
On our government's website. I understand that some of you watching today are worried about your families. We encourage all Canadians to take steps as necessary to protect themselves. As we've seen this week, the reality of this virus means that everybody needs to take the necessary precautions. We know that this virus has created impacts on our economy, and we're ready to address these impacts. Earlier this week, we announced over $1 billion to make sure that our public health response continues to be world-class. Through the COVID-19 Response Fund, we're making $500 million available for provinces and territories to strengthen our healthcare system. My colleague, Minister Patty Hajdu, is in constant communication with her counterparts to ensure that their needs continue to be met. We're also investing $275 million to strengthen Canada's capacity in research and development, including research on medical countermeasures, including antivirals, vaccine development, and support for clinical trials. The uncertainty that we've seen has also had an impact on businesses and on workers. To ensure that we continue to protect workers, we announced a waiving of the 1-week period so that they may claim the employment insurance sickness benefit if they need to be quarantined. To support businesses that have been affected by COVID-19, we enhanced the work-sharing program so that workers can continue to be employed, even if their hours of work are reduced. While what we're experiencing is a health crisis, given its breadth across the globe, it also has important economic consequences. The uncertainty surrounding the spread of COVID-19 has increased volatility in our markets. And I know that this has made many Canadians anxious. But I'd like to start by saying that Canada has the strongest and most resilient banking system in the world. That's what allowed us to fare so well during the financial crisis. It's even better capitalized now and will serve Canadians just as well. As I've made it very clear, because of our strong fiscal position, we're ready and able to respond to any challenges that we face. I've been in constant contact over the last couple of weeks with banks, with labour representatives, and with business leaders, as well as my international and domestic counterparts, so that we can continue to be coordinated in our activities. To achieve this goal, I'll be hosting a weekly conference call with my provincial and territorial counterparts. We'll continue to work together on behalf of all Canadians. In fact, I spoke just this morning with both the Minister of Finance in Ontario and the Minister of Finance in Quebec. The Government of Canada is preparing a significant stimulus program to be released next week to stabilize our economy, to support businesses, and to protect Canadians during a difficult time. As a first step, today I'm announcing that we are establishing our credit facility program to support businesses and to stimulate the economy. This will make $10 billion available in additional support for Canadian businesses through the Business Development Bank of Canada and Export Development Canada. Je suis en contact permanent avec les banques, les représentants syndicaux et les chefs d'entreprise, ainsi qu'avec mes homologues internationaux et nationaux afin que nous puissions continuer notre coordination et collaboration. Pour atteindre cet objectif, j'organiserai un appel hebdomadaire avec mes homologues provinciaux et territoriaux. Nous continuerons de travailler ensemble au nom de tous les Canadiens. Le gouvernement du Canada prépare des mesures de relance fiscale importantes qui seront annoncées la semaine prochaine afin de stabiliser notre économie, de soutenir les entreprises et de protéger les Canadiens pendant cette période difficile. Dans un premier temps, j'annonce aujourd'hui nous mettons en place notre programme de facilitation de crédit pour soutenir nos entreprises et stimuler l'économie. Cela mettra 10 milliards de dollars à la disposition des entreprises canadiennes pour soutenir davantage la Banque de développement du Canada et Exportation et Développement Canada. I will tell you that this proved to be an effective tool during the 2008 financial crisis and will ensure that our businesses continue to be resilient during these very uncertain times. In addition to activities that have been taken by financial sector authorities, I've been in regular communications with the CEOs of Canada's large banks. Canadian banks also recognize the significant potential negative impact that COVID-19 may be having or may have on some of their customers. They've made a commitment to me, and we had a discussion as recently as a couple of hours ago, that they will support businesses and individuals through these difficult times in a responsible, fair, and compassionate way. We'll be holding regular calls, twice weekly calls, in the coming weeks to ensure that this happens. So with that, I'd like to turn to Governor Poloz to talk to you as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Minister. Bonjour tout le monde. The Bank of Canada is contributing to this collective effort to support the Canadian economy and financial system. It's already clear that the spread of the coronavirus is having serious consequences for Canadian families and for Canada's economy. In addition, lower prices for oil, even since our last scheduled rate decision on March 4, will weigh heavily on the economy, particularly in energy-intensive regions. Combined with the other measures announced today, lower interest rates will help to support confidence in businesses and households. For example, borrowing costs will be lowered both for new purchases and through variable rate mortgages and mortgage renewals. Today, the bank also announced a new Bankers Acceptance Purchase Facility. This will support a key funding market for small and medium-sized businesses at a time when they may have increased funding needs and credit conditions are tightening. The bank has also taken other steps to ensure that the Canadian financial system has sufficient liquidity. These additional measures have been announced in separate notices on the bank's website. The Bank of Canada is taking concerted action to support the Canadian economy during this period of economic stress. The bank's Governing Council stands ready to do what is required to support economic growth and keep inflation on target, and will continue to ensure that the Canadian financial system has sufficient liquidity. La Banque du Canada prend des mesures concertées pour soutenir l'économie canadienne en cette période de tensions économiques. Le Conseil de direction de la Banque est prêt à faire ce qui est nécessaire pour soutenir la croissance économique et maintenir l'inflation à la cible, et continuera à veiller à ce que le système financier canadien dispose de suffisamment de liquidité. Merci.
I'd like to ask Jeremy Rudin, the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, now to speak.
Thank you, Minister. Today, I want to share with you measures that OSFI has decided to take to support the resilience of financial institutions and their ability to support the economy. As the Minister mentioned, and many of you will recall, the Canadian financial system performed very well during the global financial crisis. Since that time, OSFI has strengthened its requirements and its supervisory efforts, and these measures have further improved the resilience of federally regulated financial institutions to manage through a period of stress like the one we are now experiencing. One of these measures was to institute what we called the Domestic Stability Buffer, which is an additional capital requirement for domestic systemically important banks a requirement which is built up in good times and is released when needed. Today, we are lowering the domestic stability buffer requirement for domestically systemically important banks by 1.25 percentage points of risk-weighted assets, effective immediately. Just to remind you, the DSB was most recently set at 2.25% of risk-weighted assets, effective as at the end of April, and with this announcement, the DSB requirement is now set at 1%. This action will reinforce DSIB's ability to supply credit to the economy during the expected period of disruption related to COVID-19 and associated market conditions. We calculate that the release of the DSB will support in excess of $300 billion of additional lending capacity by the major banks. We are encouraging these institutions to use this capital as well as their liquidity buffers as required. Alors, aujourd'hui, le BCIF a décidé de réduire la réserve pour stabilité intérieure, qui est une exigence pour les banques d'importance systémique, et de réduire cette réserve par 1,25 point de pourcentage avec effet immédiat. Pour vous rappeler, tout récemment, cette réserve était établie à 2,25 et avec cette annonce, la réserve, l'exigence est maintenant réduite à 1 point de pourcentage. Selon nos calculs, ça va augmenter la capacité des grandes banques de faire des prêts à un montant de 300 milliards ou plus. We're also committing that the buffer will not increase for at least 18 months from today. And during these 18 months, we will continue to review the level of the buffer in case we need to institute a further reduction. We're also announcing that in view of the current developments and in particular the strain on operations of financial institutions, we are suspending consultations on all new or revised guidance that we currently have in train. This will include suspending the consultation, which is currently ongoing, on the proposed change to the benchmark rate for uninsured mortgages, or as it's more commonly called, the mortgage stress test. And this suspension of all consultation will continue until normal operations can be resumed in the financial system. As a result, institutions will continue to use the benchmark rate as currently published by the Bank of Canada. Nous avons décidé aussi d'arrêter toute consultation qui était en train en ce qui concerne les changements de réglementation, incluant la consultation qui était couramment en train au sujet du changement du taux de simulation de crise ou autrement dit le mortgage rate stress test. Et ce suspens va être continué jusqu'à on est en mesure de reprendre les conditions normales. We will continue to work closely with domestic partners and with international regulators to address the uncertainties in the days ahead and to promote coordination and financial stability. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to thank the superintendent. I'd also like to thank the governor for the efforts that we've made to work together in a coordinated fashion. Of course, both of them continue to represent independent organizations of government, and that is an important function of the Canadian economy and a strength that we have. But in a time of stress, our ability to work together is critically important. I want to be very clear with you today. While we've taken some very important steps, our government continues to be planning for every contingency. We're going to continue to respond to challenges as they come. Our government's ready, able, and we will be nimble in our responses. We'll continue to protect Canadians, and we're currently considering a variety of important options to help them in this time of need. To all Canadians, our government wants you to know that we have your back. We'll take every necessary step in future to ensure that you can have confidence. As you can see today, we've taken important steps together to keep our economy strong. And just a word from me. We are fortunate to live in a country where, over the course of the last day, I've been able to speak to provincial finance ministers. Our Prime Minister has been able to caucus with premiers from across the country. We've been able to work together as financial institutions in government, and we've been able to get the banks together to talk about how we can best meet up to this challenge. We have a country that's able to work together in a concerted way to face challenges, to protect Canadians, to protect our economy, and to keep us strong. Thank you very much, and we're happy to take your questions.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Alors, on va, just a reminder, we're also using the mics, so we're going to start with CTV, and then we're going to go to Le Devoir afterwards.
Ian Wood, CTV News. You've done a lot for businesses, but it doesn't seem that there's been much for workers outside of expanding EI eligibility. Are you going to do more for workers, such as increase sick leave benefits to those that don't usually receive them?
Well, let me start by saying, as your Minister of Finance, we are going to do whatever it takes to protect Canadians and keep our economy strong. We are looking now at the ways that we can deliver support to Canadians to make sure that they have the money they need as they go through a challenging time. You've heard us today introduce measures that are going to add $300 billion in lending capacity to businesses. That's in support of workers. So we will continue to figure out how we can deliver. That's what we're doing right now. So the quantum is not in question. The support for workers is not in question. And we'll have more to talk about next week.
Right, but what about someone who does not receive sick benefits? They're sort of out of the loop on this, except for potentially having EI. But my second question was more: do we fear political or economic ramifications from the United States if we were to close our borders with them?
We're going to continue to take the best advice from health authorities on how we should manage our borders. We know that keeping Canadians safe, protecting their health, is not only critically important for people, but it's also important for our economy by mitigating the risks that we see. And we'll continue to take that approach.
Très bien, Le Devoir.
Bonjour, M. Morneau. Première question sur la date du budget. Pouvez-vous nous en dire un peu plus? Est-ce que c'est sûr que ça va être au-delà du 20 avril, puisque la Chambre ne siégera pas? Ça pourrait être avant. Avez-vous une idée?
Merci. Maintenant, nous considérons les mesures qu'on peut faire la semaine prochaine pour stimuler notre économie, pour assurer que nous pouvons protéger notre situation, nous pouvons protéger les Canadiens. Donc ça, c'est très important. Nous avons un accord avec les autres partis qu'on peut avoir une session immédiate si c'est nécessaire de faire des mesures pour protéger et stimuler notre économie, pour protéger les Canadiens. Et je suis certain qu'on va avoir des mesures importantes pour notre économie et pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes la semaine prochaine.
OK, ça ne répond pas vraiment à ma question. Est-ce que le budget sera déposé après le 20 avril? Et puis ma question de suivi sur le 10 milliards, excusez-moi, le 10 milliards en crédit pour les entreprises. Pouvez-vous nous en dire un peu plus? Ça sert à quoi? Quel est l'objectif? Est-ce qu'il y a des conditions? Est-ce que c'est juste les petites et moyennes entreprises ou c'est n'importe qui? Comment un peu est-ce que ça va marcher?
C'est une bonne question. Nous voulons protéger les Canadiens, les Canadiennes, et de cette façon, c'est très important qu'on doit avoir les entreprises qui sont dans une bonne position. Ça veut dire qu'il y a deux mesures très importantes. Le 300 milliards de dollars en capacité pour les banques, ça c'est très important. Mais en plus, le 10 milliards de crédit, c'est le crédit de la Banque de développement Canada et la Banque d'export de Canada, ça c'est très important pour les petites et moyennes entreprises. De cette façon, ils peuvent avoir accès de crédit, ils peuvent protéger leurs affaires dans une position avec un niveau d'incertitude et un niveau où ils ont peut-être moins de revenus. Et ça c'est très important pour eux et bien sûr pour leurs employés. le 300 milliards de dollars en capacité, ça c'est pour notre économie en total, ça c'est pour les banques et ça c'est très important pour notre économie. Le 10 milliards, c'est normalement, la grande majorité, c'est pour les petites et moyennes entreprises.
Okay, so we're going to go to Bloomberg right here, and afterwards it's going to be La Presse in the back. Thanks.
Hi, this is Shelley Hagan with Bloomberg News. What changed in the last 24 hours that led to this coordinated response from the Bank of Canada, OSFI, and the Finance Department?
We have been working, as I think you know, from day one on how we can ensure that we are not only protecting Canadians, but protecting our long-term economy. What is clear to us is that the first step is and always should be the protection of people's health, the protection of the healthcare system, and that's why we move forward in that regard first and foremost. We also, though, recognize that we have a much bigger impact on our economic health if we act in a coordinated way. That's what has been working, has led us to work together to make sure that we have a coordinated response. Distinctly different in different sectors of the government, yes, but coordinated. And it's similar to what we're working on doing internationally. The Prime Minister will be having a call with G7 leaders on Monday. I've been in regular touch with my G7 counterparts, and we are working together with institutions like the International Monetary Fund at the same time. We know that economic measures that we take have a bigger and more important impact on our economy, and therefore a more important way that we can protect Canadians if we work in a coordinated and collaborative way.
And what measures have you been discussing to introduce in the stimulus package next week?
What we're looking at for next week is ensuring that we can give comfort to Canadians that they, during a time when they might not have the same funds that they would normally have if they have to be off work, that they have the capacity to continue supporting themselves and their families. So we're looking at direct measures to support individuals and families. We're also always considering how we can make sure that their employment opportunities stay robust. So those are the things that we're looking towards, and what we're assuring right now is that we have a way to deliver that gives people the resources they need at the right time.
Parfait. On va à la presse, puis après on va aller à Reuters.
Monsieur Morneau, deux banques aujourd'hui ont dit que le Canada allait tomber en récession sous peu. J'aimerais savoir quelle est votre analyse de la situation économique à la lumière de ce qui se passe en ce moment. Est-ce que le Canada va tomber en récession selon vous?
Nous savons qu'il y a un niveau d'incertitude important en ce moment. C'est à cause de la situation. C'est difficile à savoir maintenant la significance et la duration de le défi de coronavirus. De cette façon, c'est pas possible pour maintenant de dire exactement ce que va passer. Mais ce que je sais, c'est très important d'avoir des mesures qui va stabiliser notre économie. C'est pour ça que nous sommes ici dans une façon coordonnée pour avoir des mesures importantes aujourd'hui. Et ce que je voudrais dire, semaine prochaine, on va avoir des mesures de relance de niveau fiscal. Ça, c'est très important pour assurer les gens qu'ils vont avoir l'argent nécessaire de continuer d'être dans une bonne position pour eux et leur famille. Ça, c'est très important. Et en même temps, qu'ils ont les opportunités de continuer de travailler avec leur compagnie. Donc, on a des choses à considérer ce week-end et on va avoir des mesures la semaine prochaine.
Question pour M. Poloz. Je pense que vous êtes censé prendre votre retraite cette année. Est-ce que vous comptez retarder la date de votre départ compte tenu que la crise ne fait que commencer et une stabilité à la Banque du Canada serait peut-être utile à l'heure actuelle?
Non, c'est pas vraiment en considération. Nous sommes une équipe à la Banque du Canada. C'est une excellente équipe et je suis confiant avec cette équipe. Alors non, je n'ai pas un plan de changer cette décision. Non, c'est assez.
Et ce que je peux dire, c'est, à mon avis, nous sommes heureux d'avoir quelqu'un comme Gouverneur Poloz ici avec nous pour une situation avec un niveau d'incertitude.
On va aller à Reuters, just on the other side, Kelsey. Okay. Et après, on va à la Radio-Canada au fond.
Thank you. Governor Poloz, if you could please provide some insight into what the Board of Governors saw as changing to require an emergency move. that would be great. And to the gentleman from OSFI, if you could just clarify what is the new rate for the DBS, that would be great.
Okay, for our part, I'm going to say the main fundamental that has changed since our last decision is that oil prices continue to move lower and are showing signs of persisting in that. It's a difficult analysis to make at this stage, but analyzing those risks suggests that we need to consider carefully the implications of a much lower oil price for the economy. It's, of course, the blunt end of that effect is in certain regions, oil-producing regions, but as we've talked in late 2014, early 2015, those effects go across the entire economy. And so just on the strength of those moves alone, there's fundamental reasons for substantial response for monetary policy. Our timing today, I think, is intended to capitalize on the coordinated aspect of the announcement. That is, there's some significant measures happening today and early next week, which I think people should see as a coordinated and very powerful package. And that should, my concern about this is how does confidence, both business confidence and consumer confidence, weather the storm? Of course, we believe all this will be temporary, but it can be prolonged if confidence is unduly damaged. And so these actions are meant to buttress that confidence and get us a bridge across the trouble.
So the domestic stability buffer is now at 1 percentage point, or 100 basis points if you prefer. It had most recently been set at 2.25%, which would have come in effect at the end of April. So the reduction then is 1.25% or 125 basis points.
Reuters is reporting that your stimulus package that you are planning to announce next week could be a multi-billion-dollar package, up to potentially $20 billion. Is that a figure that you are looking at right now?
What we're doing and what we're assuring Canadians is that we are able to deliver to them the support they need financially, individually, for them and their families. We also know that we want to stabilize the economy. So as we do that, we're making sure that we have a sufficiently important stimulus that can actually achieve the important goals for families, individuals, and businesses, but also recognize that our overall goal is to stabilize the economy. And we'll have more to say on both the exact quantum and the measures next week.
Radio-Canada.
Monsieur Morneau, donc vous avez annoncé, entre autres pour les petites entreprises tout à l'heure, quelque chose autour de 10 milliards de dollars. Il y a d'autres programmes qui suivront. Il y a sûrement des milliards qui vont accompagner ces programmes-là. J'aurais le goût de vous poser la question suivante. Est-ce que vous vous êtes assuré ou est-ce que vous allez vous assurer qu'il n'y ait pas de lourdeur administrative associée à ces programmes-là? Ce que je veux dire, et pour être bien clair, le red tape.
C'est très important pour nous de considérer comment nous pouvons délivrer les opportunités aux Canadiens, Canadiennes et aux entreprises. C'est pour ça que nous avons considéré comment notre approche peut être similaire qu'on a déjà fait. Donc, l'approche que nous avons choisie, c'est la même approche qu'on a utilisée en 2008 et 2009. C'était déjà utilisé. Et c'est une approche où les petites et moyennes entreprises peuvent continuer d'utiliser leur banque. De cette façon, c'est très facile. C'est facile pour eux. Et ils vont avoir le support devant la banque, de la Business Development Bank de Canada et la Banque d'Export Development du Canada. Donc, il n'y a pas de red tape. Il y a une façon qui a été déjà utilisée, qui est facile pour les entreprises. Et de cette façon, ils peuvent avoir l'assurance que nous allons être là pour eux et pour leurs employés.
Bon, ça va me forcer à poser peut-être une troisième question, mais
il n'y a que deux.
Mais pour les Canadiens qui seront donc à qui vous allez présenter les programmes la semaine prochaine, pour les Canadiens, c'est une chose. Pour les entreprises, vous dites on va éviter le red tape, il n'y en aura pas, mais pour les Canadiens.
C'est aussi la même situation. Nous voulons trouver des des façons de délivrer les opportunités aux Canadiens et Canadiennes. C'est pour ça il n'y a aucun problème au niveau de support. La question, et nous devons avoir les réponses importantes, la question est exactement comment, et nous allons avoir plus à dire la semaine prochaine.
Juste, si vous me permettez, pour rester sur le thème de la paperasse, ce que les gens n'aiment pas trop en temps de crise, est-ce que vous avez décidé ou pas de repousser les déclarations de revenus, la date limite?
Nous sommes en train maintenant de considérer exactement comment nous pouvons avoir le support nécessaire. Donc, on va avoir plus à dire la semaine prochaine.
Hi, Daniel Leblanc, Globe and Mail. Mr. Morneau, the help that will be coming to Canadians, one of the questions is some people have precarious positions, the gig economy. You're talking about direct measures to help people, but you're also talking about broader issues of stabilization. Will the programs actually help the people who are losing income right now, or will it be broader and you'll try to catch all of these people, or will it be directed at people who are actually having problems, as Mr. Trudeau says, paying their rent and their mortgage?
The frame I'd like you to think about is, first of all, we want to be able to stabilize our economy, so fiscal stimulus is important. But what we're looking at is the direct impacts on Canadians. So Canadian situations are different, and that's why we need to make sure that we consider those different situations. There are Canadians who are in our employment insurance system. There are Canadians who aren't in our employment insurance system because they might not have enough hours, or they might be in a different kind of work environment. So in that regard, we need to think about how we can appropriately ensure that we can support people in different situations, and that's the work that we're doing right now.
Colleague here, I assume you've been talking to the insurance industry of late. What have they told you about vulnerabilities in the economy related to insurance that business have to protect against losses caused by business disruptions related to the pandemic?
It's an important question, and I think what we'll see is that there will be many questions that people will have in different industries. We're considering different sectoral impacts as we look at how we can best respond. But to be clear, what we're saying from a federal government standpoint is that we're going to do whatever it takes to support and stabilize our economy. We have the fiscal capacity. As the country in the G7 with the best balance sheet, we have the capacity to do this. So in a sense, what we're doing is trying to provide that bridge for organizations and for people as they go through a temporary time, as Governor Poloz mentioned, of stress as a result of an external force that none of us could have predicted.
We're going to go to Toronto Star and after Politico.
Hi, good afternoon. Bruce Campion-Smith, the Toronto Star. To Minister Morneau, can you just talk about the scale of stimulus you think is needed to keep the economy out of recession? And will this force a postponement of any of the promises made by your party in the last election? And just as a supplementary, I wasn't sure in the response to my colleague whether or not the budget had been delayed or this would replace the budget. Thank you.
I think what I'd like to say is that the scale of the response will be against the scale of the challenge. We're trying to make sure that we do what it takes in order to stabilize our economy. That means considering the issues facing individual Canadians. It also means considering the overall impact that we're seeing in the economy, and that's what we're working towards. It's important that we address the issue that we're facing. Importantly, this will mean that we will have the potential to come back to the House as required. The House of Commons, I think, as you know, is standing down. And as that happens, we have an agreement with all parties that we can come back should we need to pass emergency measures. That's what I'm focused on right now, and that's what I think we should be appropriately focused on, as Canadians want to know that we're protecting them, that we're protecting the healthcare system, and that we're ensuring our economy continues to have the strength that it needs to provide continued employment. As I say, we're very focused on those measures as the first order of business, and we'll have more to say on that in future.
A question to Governor Poloz. Just with today's announcement of a rate cut, you're almost sort of out of bullets, it would seem. What happens if further action is needed? Are there other remedies? And
Well, as I said, we stand ready to take further action if we think it's needed. And we have a variety of other tools in the toolkit, some of which we're mentioning today. A banker's acceptance purchase facility is no small deal. That's an important place where we have observed credit stresses already for small, medium-sized issuers. So if we can provide relief to that, again, many of these measures are positioned so that the banking system continues to work. It's not about doing something separate from that. That's if the banking system continues to work well, and people are able to tap their credit lines, et cetera, uninterrupted to get them through this, then I think we will have achieved a major buffering action. But other things that we can do if those channels do get clogged is, in the sort of credit space, such as, lending in order to fund more credit, and says lending directly ourselves to the system. And for sure, we're in a position to put plenty of liquidity at the hands of the banks. If those demands continue to rise for their credit lines, they'll need to fund those increases. And if the funding markets for banks get a little choppy, they've been a little choppy, but they could get tighter, then we're in a position to help them with that. For example, accepting parts of their mortgage book as collateral. This was a capability we didn't have back in 2008, but we have put all those pieces together in the intervening years. And so that means that there's a very big stock of potential funding capacity from the central bank through that channel now, if stresses in international markets go up. But at the moment, they're functioning reasonably well. Again, these are safeguards to ensure that the system, as we know it, continues to function well and gets us through this. And other measures like EDC and BDC are kind of like backups, and especially in the small, medium-sized company space where it's more likely to show up. If you're not a big name, it's harder to roll your paper.
The last one, Politico.
What can you tell us about what kind of coordinated response we can expect from the G7?
We are in constant communication with our international counterparts. I know the Prime Minister has been in regular communication. I think you would have heard that he spoke to President Trump yesterday. He spoke to the Prime Minister of Italy. He spoke to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He is having a call with his G7 counterparts on Monday. So that, first and foremost, is quite important. The G7 finance minister and central bank governors are in regular contact. The governor informed me that he had actually spoken to the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank leader just before coming here today, which is consistent with how I'm communicating with my colleagues internationally as well. Clearly, the situation is different in different countries, so we are looking at measures that will be different based on those different situations. But we are working to coordinate in a way that means that we can have a more significant impact than any one of us would have individually. And I think you'll continue to see that level of working together, which we know is important.
And Governor Poloz, I'm wondering, are you willing to consider moving rates into negative territory if necessary? And can monetary policy be effective when rates are already so low?
Well, as I said in my opening remarks, it does have a material effect, even if it doesn't promote additional spending in the economy, which is normally the way you think of it. But every month there's a stock of people who are renewing their mortgages. And if their mortgage payments go down because of lower rates, then they have more free cash flow afterwards. So that helps to cushion the blow of these things. And of course, if they're on a variable rate mortgage, then it's automatic that they're going to get that extra cash flow. So these are not simple little things. These are quite important channels of influence. But also, as I said in my speech a week or so ago, if you use these actions to buttress consumer confidence, what can happen is, if those people are planning to actually enter the housing market, then there is a little lower barrier for them to get into it. and then their confidence is buttressed by the collective action that's going through the system, other major purchases. So in situations like this, it's consumer and business confidence which tend to erode, and that causes decisions just to slow down regardless of how much capacity there is in the system. So we want to people to understand that we're on the job and that we're going to stabilize the economy. Negative interest rates, I don't think I'm alone amongst central bankers. We don't like the idea that much. It's in the toolkit. We know from experience of other countries that it can have an additional effect on the margin. It's not a happy place for the banking system, and so, of course, it's usually in situations where there may be less fiscal firepower. And I think what we're seeing today is evidence that there is fiscal firepower. I know the minister has said it clearly before. We've got capacity, and so that's very helpful. And it means that the idea of negative interest rates is something we can put up on the shelf and know that it's there, but it's very unlikely to be needed given the firepower that we have.
And I'd just like to add, I mean, it should not be lost on you, it should not be lost on Canadians that the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Central Bank of Canada are sitting beside each other today talking about the importance of coordinated action on the monetary front and on the fiscal front. We have the capacity to act on the fiscal front to protect Canadians, and that's what we intend on doing. We have the capacity to act on the fiscal front to make sure that we continue to have a strong economy, and that's what we are committing to do. And the work that the Bank of Canada is doing to make sure that our financial system works to help to ensure that Canadians have confidence is critically important. So working together, including with the superintendent, is important, and we're looking forward to having more to say to you and to Canadians next week. And I'll just tell you as a small and important human interest story, when you saw the superintendent giving his speech, I want you to know that when he did the French, he was extemporaneously translating it as he went along because he only had his notes in English. So kudos to him. He can do this in both languages. So thank you very much. It's good to be here with you today.
Thank you very much for your time.